Malachi Branham has been announced as Big Ten Freshman of the Week. Is this the year G. Scott Jr. puts it all together? And will the Ohio State Buckeyes win the rest of their regular season games? All that and more right here on Locked On Buckeyes.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Tuesday, March 1st in the year 2022, and today's episode of Locked On Buckeyes is brought to you by RunYourPool. March Madness is here, and RunYourPool has a better way to create your bracket. RunYourPool.com, the premier sports pool hosting service. And I would also like to thank every person out there, yes, that's you, for making Locked On Buckeyes their first listen or first watch of every single day. Not one, not two, but for the third time this season, Malachi Branham has been named the Big Ten Freshman of the Week. Of course, when you average 23.7 points per game over 3 games, that's a great way to get that award. Malachi Branham put up 27 points against the Indiana Hoosiers. It had some big baskets late to propel Ohio State to an overtime win on Monday just a week ago. He followed that game up by scoring 31 points against Illinois on 9 of 13 shooting. And then things kind of happened where he came back to earth, where Malachi Branham only scored 13 points against the Maryland Terrapins on 4 of 13 shooting. But when you're averaging 23 plus points per game over those 3 contests, that's a great way to get this award. The name that I have been thinking about and trying to use for Malachi Branham, I like alliteration, and I do think that this thing is perfect for him. Malachi Branham is also known as, or can be called, the flourishing freshman because he just flourishes on the court. He has been able to quickly realize how to play college basketball, how to properly utilize his height and his length, and how to get to the basket, and how to make sure that he is doing things that he wants to do, that he is comfortable doing, and that he is not allowing the defense to dictate every move for him while he's on the court. Malachi Branham is amazing to watch play the basketball. And for a freshman, I was not expecting him to come in and play this well. My buddy Mike, him and I talk every now and then about basketball, football, Ohio State wise, and he said, hey, Malachi Branham is a hooper. Like, okay, great. In my mind, he's a freshman. I know there are some freshmen that are ultra special, but most freshmen come into the college basketball, even the college football, and they just don't do all that. They don't flourish in this way. And it's not a knock against them. It's very, very hard to go from the high school level to the college level. You might say, Jay, what if they go to a prep school? They know they have some prep schools where guys are playing different competition, higher competition, better competition, and those guys are really eating, sleeping, breathing basketball all the time. Yes, that is true. But as we saw with Dwayne Washington Jr. going from Sierra Canyon, it's different going from that level to the college level. Very, very hard, very, very difficult. And it took Malachi Branham a little time to get his feet wet. It took Malachi Branham a little bit of time to be able to get to the place where he is right now, where he is so comfortable being a big piece at Ohio State, and even to the tune that sometimes he is the go-to scorer. He is somebody that Chris Holtmann can lean on and will lean on at Ohio State to be someone that late in games, we're going to put the ball in your hand. Someone that late in games, we can rely on the flourishing freshman to get the job done. This year, by the numbers, Malachi Branham is averaging 12.6 points a game, 3.7 rebounds a game, 1.8 assists a game, 0.6 steals, 0.3 blocks. The steals and blocks, I like the steal number to go up. The blocks, those are going to come every now and then. But here's where things get interesting. 48.6% from the field is his shooting percentage. He is hitting 50% of his 2-point attempts. And from downtown, he's shooting 44%. He's not your average freshman. There are other numbers we can go through. He's shooting 84% from the field, 84.5% from the free throw line, 84.5% from the free throw line. Imagine, imagine if he was shooting 84.5% from the field. That boy be a lottery pick. I mean, we talk about Liddell being a lottery pick. He'd be getting drafted ahead of Liddell, and he'd be a surefire one and done. Speaking of mock drafts and where he might go in the draft, there was a mock draft recently that had Branham going 41st overall in the upcoming NBA draft. And that was the first time I had considered or thought about Branham leaving after year one in Columbus. Chris Holtmann has not had a one-and-done player. I did not think Branham would be that guy. I don't expect most players at Ohio State to be one-and-done players. I don't even know if Malachi Branham is considering even thinking about being a one-and-done player in college basketball. He has the possibility, too. I mean, if you want to go through the pre-draft process, I talked about this with Mike Cagley of IlliniGuys.com last week. If he wants to go through the pre-draft process, figure out where he is currently with the other guys in the NBA draft, the prospects, see where he can improve, and then make a decision that way, that would make sense. But I personally, if you're going to be a second-round pick in year one, I don't think it's wise for you to go to the NBA draft at all. I don't. Chris Holtmann has done something that has really helped this team. Pushed Branham. He has propelled Branham. He has put Branham in places where you have to sink or swim to simply see, will you keep your head above water? Will you easily keep it above water? Will you barely? Will you struggle? Or will you flourish into the point that you're not just barely keeping your head above water, but your waist up, knees above the water, and you're killing the game every time you're on the court? Malachi Branham had a phenomenal week. There's more basketball to be played. How high of level of basketball will he play this week and then going into the Big Ten Conference Tournament, then the NC2A Tournament? That is to be determined. But winning Big Ten Freshman of the Week 3 times this year, that's huge. That's a great way to build confidence, and that's a great way to really show everybody, remind yourself, I can play at this level, and I need to play at this high level every single game for this team to be successful throughout the Big Ten Conference Tournament and the NCAA Tournament as well. You guys are killing the game on the YouTube. I look at it almost daily, and I want to say thank you for the added growth. We're still on the race to 1,000 subscriptions. Let's get there as quickly as we can. There are some guests that I would love to have on this show, but we got to get to 1,000 subscriptions before we get to that point. Let's get there. Push it to your friends, to your family. Take somebody's phone, go to their YouTube on their phone, hit the subscribe button on the Locked On Buckeyes podcast. Thank you for what you're doing with the growth. It's greatly appreciated. Make sure you hit the like button on this video and hit the bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live. G. Scott Jr. came in with a lot of hype, came in with a lot of belief that he would be somebody that Ohio State would utilize properly and in a great way while playing the wide receiver position. Ultimately, last year, he decided that it was time for him to change positions, to go from the wide receiver spot to the tight end spot. Those are not the same positions. Those are two different skill sets. Yes, you still have to use your hands to catch the ball as a tight end. But going from being split out wide and being on an island to being inside in the box in the trenches, those are two different things. And I think this transition for G. Scott Jr. is getting more and more interesting as the days keep going along. I've been asking my question. I saw somebody in the comment section ask this question as well. We're going to tackle this listener question today. Is this the year G. Scott Jr. puts it all together? Now, let's think about where he was before last season. 6'3". SportsReference.com has it listed at 210 pounds. I don't believe he was that. I would just use that for his preseason weight with 210 pounds. That's good. I mean, if you're 6'3", 210, I'm perfectly fine with that as a receiver. It makes sense. A-okay. Go ahead and do it. Perfectly fine. But he realized with Jackson Smith-Njigba and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Julian Fleming and all the other players that are on the wide receiver position, some of them are escaping my memory right now. All those other players, even though Olave and Wilson are gone, there was still a Emeka Egbuka. There you go. There were still so many other immensely talented receivers that G. Scott Jr. said, maybe it's time for me to switch positions so I can get on the field. This is not the first time that this has happened at Ohio State. Noah Potter has done it. Kate Stover has done it a couple of times. These are just things that happen in college because players want to play the football. It just happens. I do believe during the season around Rose Bowl week, it was listed that G. Scott Jr. I had gained some weight. He was up in the 220s. Ohio State's official website has him listed at 225, 6'3", 225. Not ideal for a tight end. So as I'm thinking about this question, I'm laying everything out this way on purpose because your typical Ohio State tight end is going to be 20 pounds minimum, more heavier than where G. Scott Jr. is currently. He has the height for it. 6'3" is a good height. 225, that weight is not ideal. And even if you're going to be an H-back at Ohio State, you see Mitch Rossi, 6'1", like 245. His body build and his frame is completely different than that of G. Scott Jr. or even your typical Ohio State tight end. Now, could he be more of a Kyle Pitts, used to be at Florida type of tight end? That's possible. But Kyle Pitts is a different breed. Currently in Atlanta for the Falcons, making strides to have year two be a lot better than year one, even though year one was really good. Don't get me wrong. He's a really talented kid, but he's making strides to get better. When it comes to G. Scott Jr., it's not only the weight that concerns me, but it's so many of the minute details when it comes to the switching up positions and going to a tight end that I don't know if this is going to be the year that he'll be able to put it together. Here's what Kevin Wilson had to say back in December in regards to G. Scott Jr. Quote, "He's not a true tight end size wise yet. He's gotten his weight into the mid 220s. He doesn't lack courage or the ability to want to block or the toughness. He actually is very, very strong. If you go to the weight room, he's strong. He does need the old little more lead in the pencil just when I'm blocking guys. Have the mass to anchor down and firm up some things. But that being said, he's a guy that flexes out as a receiving tight end better than those guys, the other tight ends. To be a complete tight end, though, we've got to continue to get a little bit more weight and continue to enhance that," end quote. In regards to the weight, it's something that I did not hit back when I talked about players gaining weight and getting healthier about a week or two ago. When it comes to G. Scott Jr. gaining weight and getting healthier, yeah, you could go from 210 to 230 to 240 to 250. That's ideal. Now, if he wants to be a 6'3", 235 flex out tight end that occasionally comes in to blocks on the end, but he's not going to be your traditional tight end set on the line, that may work. But as you gain weight, an ideal thing to think in your mind if you're an athlete, am I going to keep my quickness? Am I going to keep my speed? Are my legs going to be able to do the same things that they have been doing previously? Am I going to keep my vertical, my jumping ability? Am I able to have the same free movement, or am I going to have to stretch a little bit more to keep that same flexibility and mobility that I had previously? These are all things that I do think G. Scott Jr., not Mark Pantonio, Mickey Marotti, Kevin Wilson, and the other members there that are part of the strength and conditioning program and the coaching of the tight ends at Ohio State, I firmly believe they're thinking about all these things now, or have been for over a year, when it comes to G. Scott Jr.'s progression. Splitting out outside and being a split out tight end, that's perfect. That'd be ideal for him. But my question with G. Scott Jr., this would go for anybody. I don't care if you're an athlete or you're just somebody that's trying to gain some weight just because. Are you going to be the same speed? Are you going to go from running a 4.4 to a 4.6, and how quick and how does that 4.6 affect you when it comes to your brain, your movement, your flexibility, all of those things? 4.4 is fast. A 4.6 is fast. I think too many people realize like that jump between 4.4 to 4.6 to the average eye, it's not like it's drastic. However, when you're on the football field, going from a 4.4 to a 4.6, that could be a difference between you getting tackled on the 1 yard line, the half-yard line, or getting to pay dirt. Yes, those types of differences in times in the 40-yard dash, those are things that are going to be won. We're going to talk about those later in the week as the NFL Combine is this week. A little teaser on tomorrow's show. We're going to have a preview for the NFL Combine. The Combine's already started, but they have not started the on-field workouts just yet. So our preview will come on day one when they start those on-field workouts at the NFL Combine. G. Scott Jr., I don't think this is the year he puts it together. If anything, it's going to be next year. I think Joe Royer is going to be the starting tight end. We're going to talk more about him probably coming up over the next few weeks. I think Mitch Rossi is going to keep his H-back position. And if anything, you're at 225 right now. If you gain 15 pounds to get up to 240 by the start of fall camp, how does that affect you in your mentals, and how does that affect you in your ability with your feet? Not only as a blocker, but also in the power your body has and the speed you have as well. Losing speed going from receiver to tight end, this is not crazy. It happens every single year. I'm not going to lose my mind about that. But I know the mentality and how it can affect your mentals. Being able to go from receiver to tight end, it's a challenge. I think G. Scott Jr. can do it. I just don't know if this is the year that he puts it all together and he gets on the field consistently to be that tight end, that person in the passing game that can be a different type of weapon, a different asset that Ryan Day wants to use or will use consistently in every game. If you are a business owner, I would love to hear from you. Send me an email. Send an email to jstevens317 about jstevens317@gmail.com about your business, because I would love to advertise your business here on the podcast. Once again, jstevens317@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you and discuss the possibility about your business, what you're doing in your local area, being advertised here on the Locked On Buckeyes podcast. Tonight, Ohio State has a basketball game against Nebraska. On Thursday, Ohio State has a basketball game against Michigan State. And then on Sunday, Ohio State caps off and ends their regular season against their rival, the Michigan Wolverines. No, Juwan Howard is not coaching in this game. He'll be able to coach in the Big Ten Conference Tournament, but he has been suspended for the rest of the season due to the altercation that Greg Gard, and the assistant coach from Wisconsin got into about a week ago. I still think, I haven't said this on this podcast, Juwan Howard started it. No matter what you want to say about Greg Gard calling the timeout, Juwan Howard tried to do a walk by, pull his mask down and not talk to Greg Gard like somebody that does not want to start a conversation, even though he is not afraid to share his opinion on things and say how he wants to do things to, like, Maryland's coach Mark Turgeon, former coach Mark Turgeon. But I do think Juwan Howard started that. If he was a man and shook his hand, said, "Hey man, I remember that," but he still looked him in the eye and shook his hand, I don't know if it gets as escalated as he did, or he keeps that to himself. I don't know if that really happens like it did. But the drive-by, walk-by started it, and Juwan Howard got suspended for overhand smacking a grown man in his face. But Ohio State this basketball team is confusing. I talked about it yesterday. Will they win the rest of their games? Luckily, they're at home. And I do think that's a big thing to think about with this basketball team. They're 10-1 at home, struggled on the road. Big Ten league play has been weird. You're losing to Maryland. You should have beaten Iowa. You're losing to teams that you should not. You lost to Indiana. You're losing to teams that you should not lose to. That's your better than. And when I think about their entire season, I think about this final week, how Ohio State is pushing to get a double bye in the Big Ten Conference Tournament. What do they need to do to solidify that? Win out. I think currently they're number 4 in the conference right now as far as the league standings go. I do understand and mentally am thinking about how grueling and how battered and maybe how bruised or how upset some of the bodies are. Upset body. You know what I'm saying? How painful some of these hits might be, and how these guys just need to get some rest. How these guys are not used to playing a game. Let me get my calendar out, because just to go through this really quickly, we're not used to seeing Ohio State or any college basketball team play this many games in a row. And so this season, the Big Ten decided to postpone games and then scrunch things down into the final week of the final month and final 4 or 5 weeks in the regular season. I don't think it was wise, but it's what they decided to do, and that's where we are right now. Ohio State had a game on the 6th against Maryland, had a game on the 9th against Rutgers, had a game on the 12th against the team up north. That was kind of spread out, maybe the most spread out week that Ohio State has had And then you get to the following week, a game against Minnesota on the 15th, a game against Indiana on the 19th. You got a game on the 19th, a game on the 21st, a game on the 24th, a game on the 27th, a game on the 1st, a game on the 2nd, and then a game on the 6th. That final part of it really kind of hit different because you're realizing there's no rest for these guys. There's no, let me go home and relax for a few days. No, it's game. When you're not used to the AAU style of games where you're playing them over and quickly and you're not really getting the rest that you're used to getting, it's different. It's going to be completely honest with you. It is different. And these players are not used to playing a game on the 21st, going back again on the 24th, coming back again on the 27th, coming again at 1 day in between that game, 1 day in between the next game, 2 days in between the next game. They're not used to that in college. Some of these guys, unlike Branham, who is just a year away removed from playing AAU ball, some of them have not played AAU ball where you're playing 2, 3, 4 games in 1 day or packing in 6 games in a weekend. They haven't done that in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Let that sink in for you. Because as I think about how they will finish this season, I'm thinking about the schedule, and yes, I would love to say Ohio State will beat Nebraska. Ohio State will beat Michigan State. Ohio State will beat Michigan. I would love to come on here and pump in positive things into your speakers as we finish this day on a Tuesday. I would love that. But my gut says they win tonight, lose to Michigan State, and then beat Michigan on Sunday. That's just my gut. Michigan State is coming off a loss. So they recently lost to Purdue, and Michigan State was at home for that game. No, Michigan State beat Purdue, excuse me. And this is the time of year that Izzo is normally reeling and getting his team going together. The Spartans had a really bad stretch of games, but I do think they're going to put some really good play together over the next few weeks. Few weeks meaning going into the NC2A tournament. I don't think Ohio State wins out. Nebraska should be an easy game tonight. Michigan State's going to be tough. Possibility of not having Zedke, another injury, sucks. It's horrible, but that's the way the season has been. Sorry, guys. I want to be positive. But this basketball team, with the way that they have played the basketball, it's hard to be positive thinking about how they're going to finish the regular season. Guys, this has been fun. Remember, tomorrow, planning on having Ryan Roberts from riseanddraft.com come on the podcast and just give us a great preview of the NFL Combine and what to expect from these 7 Buckeyes that will be performing and working out in the Underwear Olympics inside Lucas Oil Stadium. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317 at gmail.com. I would like to thank everyone for making Locked On Buckeyes their first to listen of every single day. Now is the perfect time to make your second listen of the day, the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your fine podcasts. For this Tuesday, let's kill it. Let's have a good day. Got better weather outside, and let's get ready for more Buckeye basketball tonight. NFL Combine throughout the rest of the week, and 2 more games, one on Thursday, one on Sunday, to just enjoy Buckeye basketball, and hopefully, they don't make us go into cardiac arrest.